In southern Africa lies the Kalahari Desert. Home to a species of meerkat. This season, the young pups are venturing beyond their family's territory for the very first time. One day, they will come to understand the many sounds of the world around them. But for now, there is only one thing they care about: food. To get it, they must make sure their voices are heard. The smallest pup has an injured foot and struggles to keep up with the rest of the group. Young pups need more food than their parents alone can provide. So they must persuade other adult meerkats to feed them as well. But finding food in this harsh environment is far from easy. Temperatures can soar above 45 degrees Celsius. And most of the available food is hidden beneath the sand. As a result, meerkats spend much of their lives digging. Sometimes they must bury their entire bodies beneath the sand just to uncover a small meal. After hours of exhausting work, the adults helping to raise the pups are often more interested in feeding themselves than sharing with the youngsters. So the pups continue to beg. Whenever food is found, every pup lets out a shrill, desperate call, each trying to convince the adult to feed them instead of their siblings. The pups that beg more intensely are more likely to receive food. The largest pup succeeds, while the smallest misses another chance to eat. And then another. Staying close to the adults increases the chances of being heard and fed. But it also brings greater danger. At last, the little pup manages to get a mouthful of food. But the meal takes too long. When it finally looks up, the rest of the family is gone. For meerkats, if there is anything more important than food, it is family. Without the guidance of its family, the tiny pup cannot survive for long in the scorching desert. It calls out for help. But making such a call is risky. Eventually, an adult meerkat hears its cries. The heat and exhaustion have almost overcome the little pup. Its siblings encourage it to get back on its feet. Once again, it is saved by sound. As they grow, the young will face many new challenges, including learning how to hunt. Sound is an invaluable tool that helps them overcome these dangers. But some animals begin calling long before they are even born. In the wetlands of South America, danger is everywhere. A vigilant mother stands guard over her nest. She is a broad-snout caiman, more than 2 meters long and weighing around 60 kilograms. She survives by ambushing prey in the murky water. On the riverbank near the water lies a large mound of earth. It is her nest. Inside are about 30 eggs. Her long vigil is almost over. The hatchlings have yet to emerge. And they are about to face the most dangerous moment of their lives. From inside their eggs, they begin to make soft chirping sounds. Their chances of survival depend on those tiny calls.
Now, using a specially designed camera system equipped with 60 ultra-sensitive microphones, we can pinpoint exactly which egg each tiny call is coming from. The first hatchling begins to crack through its shell. But if all of the young caimans hatch at the same time, their chances of survival increase dramatically. So they keep communicating with one another, calling from inside their eggs. These tiny sounds tell their siblings how close they're to hatching. One hatchling finally breaks free. But almost immediately, it faces a new challenge. The nest that has protected them for weeks has now become a prison. The hatchlings that have already emerged continue calling, encouraging the others to hatch as quickly as possible, even after they're all out of their shells. They still can't escape the nest on their own. The call of a single hatchling is too quiet for its mother to hear. But when they all call together, their combined voices are loud enough to reach her. She's been waiting nearly 70 days for this moment. At last, it has arrived. She moves toward the nest without hesitation. One by one, she gently lifts each hatchling in her jaws and carefully carries them down to the water's edge. Sometimes, a few late hatchlings are left behind. But by now, the nest has been completely opened, allowing them to crawl out on their own. The only problem is that they have no idea where their mother is. Once again, sound becomes their lifeline. They listen for the calls of their brothers and sisters already in the water and follow those familiar voices to safety. Waiting for them at the water's edge is their mother, ready to protect every one of her young. On the very first journey of their lives, the most dangerous journey they will ever make, it is sound that leads them home. In England, spring arrives with a chorus of remarkable sounds. For many of the animals here, these sounds carry messages that are essential for survival. A worker bee has discovered a patch of flowers in full bloom. It gathers as much nectar as it can before hurrying back to the hive to share the good news with the rest of the colony. Throughout the cold winter months, the hive has remained largely inactive. But now, a new season of work is about to begin. The worker repeatedly taps the honeycomb with its abdomen, sending a signal through the hive. Like many insects, honeybees don't have ears. They can't hear sounds traveling through the air. Instead, they sense vibrations. Specialized receptors in their legs allow them to detect the tiny vibrations created by each tap. With a steady series of rhythmic knocks, the bee sends its message directly into the bodies of its nestmates. One by one, the bees that have remained dormant through winter begin to awaken. Before long, the entire colony is alive with activity. They pour out of the hive in search of food. Within just a few days, the food stores that had been nearly exhausted are once again filled with fresh nectar and pollen. Those precious supplies will nourish the next generation of bees. Once a colony grows to around 40,000 individuals, it prepares to swarm. To establish a new colony, it needs a new queen because the old queen has already left with part of the swarm. Deep inside several oversized queen cells, a number of young queens are still developing. Thanks to ultra-sensitive microphones, we can hear an extraordinary sound. It resembles the quacking of a duck. These unusual calls are the signals of young queen bees preparing to emerge from their cells. The worker bees detect the vibrations coming from the queen cells. In response, they begin opening the first cell to release the new queen. If two queens were to emerge at the same time, they would fight until only one survived. So the newly emerged queen must do everything she can to keep her rivals trapped inside their cells. To achieve this, she produces a distinctive signal that beekeepers call tooting. Filmed at 1,000 times slower than real time and enhanced with software that converts vibrations into color. We can actually see how the queen creates this remarkable sound. The vibrations travel from her body down through her legs and spread throughout the honeycomb. The worker bees sense these signals through specialized receptors in their legs. Each time the queen lets out a toot, the entire colony falls almost completely still for a few seconds. It's the colony's way of acknowledging that a new queen has claimed the throne. From inside their sealed cells, the remaining queens answer with a series of duck-like calls known as quacking. They're eager to emerge and challenge the new ruler. But as long as the reigning queen continues to toot, the workers refuse to release any of her rivals. She keeps broadcasting this signal for several days, until she's ready to leave the hive with roughly half of the worker bees to establish a new colony. The sounds inside the hive grow steadily more intense. Then, at last, the swarm pours out of the hive in unison. They gather on the branch of a nearby tree. Before long, a brand new bee colony will begin its life. During the earliest stages of life, many animals depend entirely on their parents. They rely on sound to maintain that vital bond. Along the coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, more than 20,000 flamingos gather to breed. The air is filled with an overwhelming chorus of calls. Yet somehow, amid all the noise, each chick can still communicate privately with its parents. One newly hatched chick has just entered the world. This vast colony offers safety in numbers, but living in such a crowded community also brings serious risks. A chick's survival depends on its ability to recognize the unique calls of its parents. It must learn this skill quickly, because only about 10 days after hatching, it will leave the nest for the first time. Every flamingo has its own distinctive voice, as unique as a vocal fingerprint. It's remarkable that a tiny chick can memorize and identify its parents' calls among thousands of nearly identical voices, but somehow, it does. Soon, the chick takes its first tentative steps beyond the nest. Even so, it's far from ready to face the outside world. Little by little, it grows more confident. But a new challenge is already waiting. The chick is growing fast, and both it and its parents need a constant supply of food. To find enough to eat, the adults must leave the colony, forcing them to leave their chick behind. The young flamingo still can't fly, and it won't be able to take to the air for another 3 months. Until then, it's extremely vulnerable. Hundreds of other chicks are in exactly the same situation. They gather together in enormous nursery groups, where safety comes from being part of the crowd. A few adults remain behind to watch over the young while the rest leave to feed. Returning later. But when they do, every parent faces the same challenge, finding its own chick among thousands of others. Amazingly, every family has its own unique set of calls. Mothers, fathers, and chicks can all recognize one another by voice alone. Even in this deafening sea of sound, each parent somehow picks out the voice of its own offspring. One father is still searching. But the chick isn't only looking for its parents. A caiman is silently waiting nearby. Ready to ambush, the chick keeps calling. But it still can't hear its father's reply. The caiman prepares to strike. The caiman suddenly lunges forward. Fortunately, it fails to catch a single chick, but the attack throws the entire colony into dangerous chaos. The young flamingo becomes separated from the rest of the group, confused and hopelessly lost. It begins begging for food from every adult that passes by. On the far side of the colony, its father continues calling without giving up. But the distance between them is simply too great. The chick can't hear him. Many young flamingos perish this way. But this chick refuses to give up. It keeps calling again and again. Across the lagoon. Its father finally hears the familiar voice. The chick's unique call stands out from thousands of others, allowing its father to recognize it instantly. At last, the two are reunited. As young animals grow, they don't just learn how to recognize their parents, they also learn to identify approaching danger and, just as importantly, to use their own voices to warn others when a threat is near. In Ontario, Canada, a wolf pack lifts its voices in a haunting chorus of howls. Their calls echo through the forest, strengthening the bonds that hold the pack together while also declaring ownership of their territory. Today, only about 500 eastern wolves remain, making these powerful howls increasingly rare. But this summer, new voices have joined the chorus. It's August, and this year's pups are howling alongside the adults for the very first time. Yet these young wolves also bring new challenges. Challenges that could put the entire pack at risk. It's the height of summer, and daylight lasts for more than 14 hours. The wolves have no choice but to hunt during the day. By now, the pups are too old to stay safely inside the den, but they're still too inexperienced to join the hunt, so the adults leave them behind in an open clearing, a place the pack visits regularly. It's an ideal playground for curious young wolves. But it's also the most dangerous period of their lives. Nearly half of all wolf pups won't survive to see their second year. What happens during these months will determine whether they live or die. Two of the pups know exactly where they're supposed to stay, but their adventurous little sister can't resist the temptation to explore. Wandering away from the safety of the clearing, she's so distracted by her surroundings that she doesn't notice a black bear quietly approaching. Very few predators are capable of killing a wolf pup. But the black bear is one of them. The young wolf remains completely unaware of the danger until her two brothers spot the threat. They immediately sound the alarm. Their warning call snaps their sister to attention. And she turns just in time to see the bear. Now all three pups are in danger. But at that very moment, the bear hears another sound. The cries of her own cubs. They need their mother. The female bear turns away, giving the young wolves a lucky escape. Even so, the danger isn't over yet. Compared with adult wolves, the pups' howls are shorter and much higher in pitch. Even so, their calls can carry for miles. And at last, someone answers. An adult wolf immediately recognizes the signal. It's their father. Carrying food, he returns to his waiting pups. As night falls, the entire pack raises its voices once again. This time, the howls are a celebration of reunion and survival. For wolves, sound is essential to maintaining the unity of the pack. But for many other animals, alarm calls can carry messages that are even more complex. As they grow, young meerkats learn not only how to find food for themselves, but also how to avoid becoming food for someone else. The desert is filled with hungry predators. And with their small size, meerkats make tempting targets. They have no armor to protect them and no powerful weapons to defend themselves. Instead, their greatest defense is sound, a remarkably sophisticated alarm system. These calls are far more than simple warnings. Each one carries a specific meaning. One call alerts the group to birds of prey circling overhead, the instant they hear it. Every meerkat looks up and scans the sky. A completely different call is used for dangers approaching on the ground, signaling the group to search the area around them. Yet another call is reserved for snakes. When a snake is spotted. The first meerkat to see it gives a rallying call, and the rest of the group quickly rushes in to help drive the snake away. Their alarm system is extraordinarily detailed. For young pups, learning to distinguish between all these different calls can be challenging, so their best strategy is simply to watch the adults and copy their behavior. But the calls communicate even more than just the type of predator. They can also reveal how quickly the threat is approaching. There is one signal that no meerkat can afford to ignore. It's the emergency alarm, a call that means immediate danger is only moments away. Hesitating for even a second could be fatal. The instant this alarm rings out, the entire group bolts for cover. Sound traveling through the air is essential to the lives of many animals. But there is another world of sound that humans still know surprisingly little about, the underwater world. Nearly 70% of Earth's surface is covered by the ocean. And for countless marine creatures, sound is one of the most important tools for survival. Coral reefs are among the noisiest places in the sea. With much of that constant soundtrack produced by fish themselves. Like many other animals, fish depend on sound from the very beginning of life. Without it, one of the reef's most iconic species would never be able to find its way home. Clownfish. Asterisk. With only a few days remaining before the next full moon, a pair of clownfish is preparing to spawn. Clownfish live in small social groups, each centered around a large sea anemone. Within every group, only 2 adults are allowed to breed. The largest fish is the female, and the second largest is her mate. The dominant male size determines a strict social hierarchy, and that hierarchy is maintained through sound. The largest fish produces the deepest calls by snapping its jaws together, creating sharp clicking and popping sounds. The male shakes his head and makes softer clicking noises to signal his submission to the female. Every clownfish living around the anemone knows exactly who is in charge. When the full moon arrives, the female is ready to lay her eggs. To do that, the pair needs a hard surface. A coconut shell carried in by the current makes the perfect nesting site. But first it has to be moved into the right position. The female produces low, rumbling sounds to signal the group, and the younger clownfish immediately respond by shaking their heads. Showing they understand the command. Working together, they push the coconut shell into place. Teamwork requires constant coordination, so they communicate continuously through clicks. Pops and jaw snaps. Once the shell is in position, they carefully clean its surface. Finally, the moment arrives. The female lays her eggs in neat rows. And the male follows behind, fertilizing each one. From that moment on, the father's job begins. Over the next 7 days, as the embryos develop, he constantly fans the eggs with his fins to supply them with oxygen and keep them clean. Just 3 days later, the developing embryos are already able to respond to sounds around them. The sounds they hear at this stage will play a crucial role in the next chapter of their lives. But another kind of sound now threatens their survival. The noise of boat engines. Whenever the father hears a passing boat, he reacts the same way he would if a predator were approaching. If boats continue to pass overhead, he spends more time hiding and less time caring for the nest. As a result, the eggs become far more vulnerable to predators and disease. Over the past few decades, noise pollution around coral reefs has increased dramatically, placing growing pressure on reef fish and the ecosystems they depend on. Even so, the devoted father does everything he can to protect his offspring. 1 week later, the long-awaited transformation finally begins. Tiny larvae break free from their eggs and are swept away from the reef by the ocean currents. For the next 10 days, they drift through the open sea. By the time they have grown to about the size of a grain of rice, they are finally strong enough to swim against the current. Now it's time to find their way home. The key is sound. Beneath the surface, the sounds of a coral reef can travel for miles. The young clownfish listen carefully, then swim toward the source of those familiar underwater sounds. They can even judge the health of a reef simply by listening to it. The louder and more vibrant the reef sounds, the healthier the ecosystem is likely to be. Once they return, the sea anemones will provide them with shelter and protection. This will become their new home, the place where they will grow, live, and spend the rest of their lives. Sound has guided them safely back. For these tiny fish, and for countless other animals just beginning life, sound is the key that unlocks the world around them. It helps them find their parents. It helps them find food. It warns them of danger. It reunites them with their own kind. It leads them home, and it teaches them how to survive. For them, sound is far more than a way to communicate. Sound is life itself.